Hello everyone. My name is Dongwoo Park. I'm currently a PhD student at Cornell Art School. So today I'm going to talk about a project titled Lopsided Inclusion, the impact of multi-employer bargaining and class-based unionism on non-regular employment in South Korea. So a couple of things. Well, this is mixed method design, so I use regression. So I just didn't want to upset the true ethnographers here. And also, this is under review right now at the journal. So I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments on this project as well. So let me briefly talk about the background and the motivation of this research. So in the last few decades, we have seen the growing use of contingent work arrangement in many countries, which is pretty much driven by employees' interest in greater flexibility. So unions in many countries have responded to this rising phenomena by trying to establish inclusive collective bargaining agreement, which aims to guarantee equal treatment for contingent workers. So my question is, under what conditions are these unions are most likely to prioritize an inclusive bargaining? My short answer to this question is the combination of multi-employer bargaining and class-based identity that is critical and really important to, for explaining the variations of union inclusiveness. So what is the bargaining structure? Well, there are so many categories to explain this difference in the bargaining structure, but I'm trying to use classic dichotomy, which is multi-employer bargaining and enterprise bargaining. So multi-employer bargaining tends to lead to more standardized wages and benefits, and also it helps the union maintain independence from the employer's influence. So it is suggested, the literature suggests that the multi-employer bargaining is associated with higher inclusiveness. There's another stream of literature talking about the importance or the role of union identity. The unions in many countries have developed on the basis of salient collective identities, such as religion or region or even ideology. But here I'm going to talk about the ideology. It is really important because it really shapes the agenda and strategies that unions pursue. So the people, scholars in this field we're focusing on the class-based unionism because unions espousing working class solidarity tend to have a stronger bargaining leverage because they sometimes engage in their membership in militant and competition tactics such as strikes and even legal motions. And also, well, these types of unions are more likely to be solidaristic because and they extend protections to more precarious groups of workers beyond their narrow membership boundaries. So, well, the union identity can be measured in different ways, but here I'm going to focus on the identity of national union confederations. But technically, these organizations do not have a formal authority over local bargaining processes, but according to the social movement unionism perspective, there are multiple ways in which these organizations can exert their influences. For example, they can use centralized pressure and bureaucratic power.
It's just requesting, just
okay, thanks.
It's struggling.
All right. Okay, I'm going to slow down. And also, they sometimes engage in identity work, such as distributing union documents and materials to raise class-based consciousness. It helps union members to develop common norms and collective goals. So these two research streams, well, they developed quite a little bit independently. So the lack of dialogue between these two research streams I think is a missing opportunity because unions often make very different strategic choices in the face of similar structural conditions. So here I'm going to focus on how identity intersects with the bargaining structure. So my main argument is the impact of multi-employer bargaining would vary by the identity of unions. So let's say there's a question to explain union inclusiveness, but here I'm going to focus on the combination or interaction between of these two factors. So my argument would be the union confederations with a class-based identity will have more success in connecting multi-employer bargaining with inclusive bargaining strategies at the workplace level. I'm going to use focus on the case of South Korea, which is interesting because it has two different union confederations that are ideologically distinct. So I think I can assess the effects of union identity while control from national context. And also there has been the expansion of non-regular employment since 1997 Asian financial crisis, which is accelerated even after 2007 financial crisis. So who are these confederations? The first is the Federation of Korean Trade Unions. It's pretty conservative union in 1970s and 80s under military regime. Most FKTU unions were considered as a company union. They are co-opted by the management and the state back then. And even after democratization in 2018, 1987, it still pursued a conciliatory approach. And the other one is Korean Confederation of Trade Unions, which was established by the radical unionists in 90s. These unions emphasize independence of organized labor, and KCTU is known for great bargaining and strike leverage. So researchers have classified FKTU as a business unionism, KCTU as a class-based unionism. So, well, the bargaining structure in Korea, it was pretty much decentralized. Previously, most of bargaining was conducted at enterprise level. Non-regular workers were excluded from the bargaining, the union protection. But since 2000, there has been the movement toward centralization. The idea was the unionists believed that the centralized bargaining structure would lead to more inclusive collective bargaining agreements. It was initially driven by the KCTU class-based union, but also the conservative union, FKTU, took centralization as their main strategy. So as you can see here, both at the organization level, at the membership level, there is an upward trend we can see, but in general, the KCTU achieved higher level of centralization than the FKTU. But I think the focus on union organization structure might be misleading because, well, some KCTU unions were unwilling to sacrifice their gains to non-regular workers. So the point I'm trying to make here is we should examine changes at the level of bargaining practices in addition to organizational level. The data I'm going to use is Korean Workplace Panel Survey. It is longitudinal. On the number of observation is 343, 148 unique workplaces. The dependent variable is the union inclusiveness. It is operationalized as a whether bargaining sessions at the workplace address pay increase for non-regular workers. Well, I want to say there are different kinds of non-regular employment in Korea. Well, they varies by their unique types of employment contract with the firm. So I'm trying to distinguish between the direct hire fixed term workers and temporary and agency workers and subcontractors, because the former group has indirect kinds of employment contract with the firm. The main independent variable is multi-employer bargaining, which is also binary. I'm going to address this as a limitation later. Also, there are many controls in my model, including industry fixed effect and survey year fixed effect. I'm going to skip this for now. So as you can see here, the interaction term between the KCTU and multi-bargaining is significant, but I think a little bit of visualization might help here. So as you can see here, the multi-employer bargaining is only effective when the union at the workplace is affiliated with the KCTU, which is a class-based union. And this pattern only applies for the workers with fixed-term contract, not the temporary agency workers and subcontractors. So, well, but these findings do not really explain how and why FKTU and KCTU are different. So which motivate me to conduct additional research. So I did I met 18 interviewees. Majority of them were currently former union officials and policy officers at either of the confederations. And also there are some independent unionists and also employee relations specialists. So what distinguished KCTU from FKTU? So KCTU was successful in building capacity to influence their strategies of local unions, and sometimes it tried to foster constant communication between the leadership and the locals. So, sometimes it used organization mechanism when the local union violates some union bylaws, and also they offer bargaining guidelines over and to the workplace unions. So one of the policy officer told me that it is our role to introduce such policies for general interest of workers. We have recommended to our affiliates to extend their bargaining agreements to non-regular workers at their workplace if possible. Also, KCTU has a very thick layer of activists, and they were very deeply committed to identity work. So who are they? Activists. Well, these people had a really strong, deep experience in democratization movement and leftist activism in the 80s and 90s. And they were not only engaged in national activities such as union conventions, but also shop floor union life, including bargaining. And the worksite meeting was a really key task for them. So they tried to educate members on the union's historical background and the ideological basis. So well, some materials will address why we need multi-employer bargaining and why we need to support solidarity, because we need to improve wage and conditions for non-regular workers, and not only ourselves. They try to do this almost every week or once a month, at least. By contrast, the FKTU lacks these kind of resources. It's very decentralized organizations. There are not many activists, even but there's virtually no activists, and they don't even have a concept of activists. They don't think that activists is needed to support this kind of multi-employer bargaining. So, but what I want to emphasize here is these differences can be explained by their distinct identities too. But FKTU, as I mentioned earlier, it is very much business unions. It focuses on building partnership at multiple levels. So it has not developed much capacity to aid workplace bargaining and human resources to do these kind of jobs. And whereas the KCTU, it focuses on building mobilizing capacity, not only at the national level, but also workplace level. So its organizational structure and the decision-making procedures specialize in this kind of multi-employer bargaining. Well, there are constraints for better solidarity. Like I said, TAWs and subcontractors, they are still excluded from the multi-employer bargaining structure. So both confederations, regardless of their identity, they were trying to build alternative strategies such as tripartite bargaining involving all the stakeholders, such as staffing agencies who just mediate the employment relationship. So like I said, well, I'm a PhD student, there are many limitations on my paper. One of them is, so one of the reviewer told me that I think, well, he think, well, I don't know, but KCTU and FKTU might differ, not only on their union identity, but also like different aspects. They might differ in their access to the institutional power. So I try to address that in the manuscript. And also my measures are not really perfect because my independent and the dependent variables are binary. So I think the future research can address this concerns much better than I do. But my contribution, which I believe, is I try to synthesize theories explaining union responses to precarious employment, and also I just wanted to emphasize why internal union structure matters. I think that this is one of the contributions of this paper in terms of debates over union democracy, broadly speaking. And also nearly all advanced countries, there has been movement toward greater decentralization, but the Korea is quite opposite because there has been greater centralization. So I think that this is kind of the lesson for us to think about, to change the way we think about the role of class consciousness and workplace militancy and working conditions for non-standard workers in general.